Welcome to Moving Through and Beyond, a podcast dedicated to sharing inspired journeys of redefining life, vision, and purpose after immense hardship and grief. My goal with this podcast is to give you hope and to let my guest journeys inspire you to make the choice to keep looking up. I'm your host, Carey Conley. Welcome, everybody, to the Moving Through and Beyond podcast. I'm Carey Conley, your host, and I get the blessing to bring to you some pretty amazing humans on the planet. And a little over a year ago, I got introduced to Dr. Dave Braun, who is the co-founder of Oola. We're going to tell you a little bit more about that at the end of this podcast. But Dave has a pretty incredible story to share with you, and I just asked him to come on and share a little bit about that. Dave, thank you so much for being on with me today.
Thank you so much. And it sounds like you introduced yourself when you said amazing human, Carey, because you're one of my favorite people on the planet. So I'm super honored to be on with you today.
Oh, thank you. This is why I love you, Dave.
It was a complete truth. I think you're
so true. It is true, you all. We didn't know each other literally less than a year and a half ago. And instantaneously when we met, became great friends and almost like family, Dave. You're kind of like a brother to me, right? I'm like your fifth sister now.
Yeah, no kidding. I have 4 sisters. That sounds like plenty, but I'll take a 5th. So
yeah,
I'll go with
I love that. So, you and I, because we've come to know each other so well, you've shared a lot of your life story with me and have been through some pretty tough stuff. And I would love for you to just kind of tell these guys a little bit about you and maybe a little bit about your history, what you've been through.
Yeah, I came from a really small town, amazing family. I have 4 sisters, which we already talked about. Great parents, great upbringing, everything. And I was the first one in my family to go to college to get a doctorate degree. I went all the way through to my doctorate degree. I met a guy in school while I was getting my doctorate named Troy Amdahl, who right now is my co-partner and business founder, co-founder of Oola. And he just became a great friend too. It was kind of one of those things, like I never had a brother. He was kind of like the brother I never had. I started working with him. And he just became a great friend. But he taught me something very important. He taught me about balancing your life in 7 key areas. He said, you're very driven, you're very passionate, you're going to want to go crush business and money, but there's more to life. And really, you need to find balance in 7 key areas. And at the time, it was, fitness was your health and finance, family, your career, faith. You got to have a faith walk, friends, and fun. He was talking to me about this as something I've never heard before. So with him, I started setting goals and I started using this system, and I found myself very successful in my late 20s, early 30s, the big house, married, kids. I had 4 daughters of my own and 1 son. So I did the same thing my parents did. And just an amazing life. Like I was living an amazing life. Troy had moved overseas and I just really drifted from this system. And I feel like if I really look back and be very honest, I feel like I took a lot of it for granted. A lot of my successes in all 7 areas, not just financial success, for granted. I feel like I felt the ego really come into my life. And I felt like, man, I'm so amazing. Like I lost some of the humility because I was the first in my family to go that far in school. And then the first one to be this successful financially and have all that. And I really lost my way. And where I found myself in 2007, 8, 9 was I found myself going through a complete financial crisis. I lost my home at the time. My business went through a bankruptcy, and that led to going through a divorce and just really finding myself at the bottom. So when we talk about a podcast named Moving Through and Beyond, there's this through part, and then there's this amazing beyond part. And I think that you just, in that moment in 2009, I was right in the middle of it. And I was asking myself, how do I possibly move through this? Like how do you go through a divorce alone, much less stacking on a bankruptcy and living in a motel on the bad side of town and health crisis? I had nothing, no business, nothing. I was driving my mom's $1,500 beat up old Taurus. My cars were repossessed. I lost everything in the financial collapse, and including my family. And I reached out to Dr. Troy. He was fully retired at this time, 42 years old, fully retired, married to his high school sweetheart. Like he was living Oola, living this great balanced life, and I was completely on the bad side of town, living my worst life. And he just said simply, he said, where you are is just where you are. It's not who you are. And I've held on to that so much, that where you are is just where you are. It's not who you are. And I think we all find ourselves in really tough spots. And when we find ourselves in these really tough positions, whether it's in our marriage or whether it's with one of our children or whether it's with, our career or our health walk, you have to kind of just say, okay, where I am right now is just where I am. It's not who I am, and who do I want to become, and how am I going to move through this, and how am I going to move past this and beyond this and really move into something that I can look back at and be proud of. So that's where I found myself. So 2008-9 was a rough couple years for me for sure.
Dave, I just can't even imagine knowing where you are now, the success you're having in your life now, being remarried, new family, new home. I know you just moved into. Oola's doing great. It's hard for me to picture you, driving this tourist and living in a motel with gunshots going off next
Yeah.
door. Um, and it must have been really hard to just feel like maybe you were really alone in it. Did you go through moments where you thought, okay, I feel alone. I feel so. We've been talking a lot with my guests about the word shame when they were going through all their adversity, feeling guilty for what they did. Did you feel any of that, or did you just feel like you said, this is where I'm at. I just need to fix this.
One thing I had was I had a positive outlook, and I'm a very naturally pretty happy person, so I had
Mm,
that. But when you talk about shame, and feeling alone, those you defined 2 years of my life. I mean, that's all I felt was alone,
right.
and that's all I felt was shame. I was so embarrassed. So I talked earlier about like the first one in my family to go to college and go that far in school, and the first one to build a home. We built a beautiful home and a racquetball court and everything. Like buy nice cars. Like I come from a very humble farm family in the middle of the Midwest, and I was the first one. Well, now I'm the first one to lose everything. I'm the first one to go through a divorce. No one in my family's ever gone through a divorce. It's never been anything that we've seen in my family. So I'm the first one. So nights at this motel were brutal, and I was there for months before I told anybody what was happening. My kids didn't even know. I would tuck my kids in. We would say our prayers. I would tuck all 5 kids in their own bedrooms because they all had these beautiful bedrooms. And then I would go downstairs and I would just sit on the couch till they were sleeping. And then I would sneak outside and I'd get in my mom's Taurus and I'd drive to the bad side of town. I had no money, like no money. I was paying this motel by the month, and trying to just keep it going. I was in this really dive motel on the bad side of town, and I would lay there every night, and I would feel completely alone, no one to talk to. My soon-to-be ex-wife wasn't talking to me about it at the time. My kids didn't even know. My family didn't know, and I just felt so ashamed. And I remember very clearly this prayer that I had every single, like all day long and every night was just, please God, don't let me die at the bottom. Like, don't let me die in this motel, and this be the legacy for my kids and my family. I'm like, please allow me just a second chance. Just allow me to come back and see what I can do. But man, it is so hard there. It's so hard. And once Oola came out, I know we'll talk more about that, but once Oola came out and we started doing book tours and talking to people, that was the first time, Carey, that I realized I wasn't alone, that I realized that half the audience was going through a divorce or losing something or going through a tough time, and everybody feels alone. And
Right.
the amazing thing I realized years later is I was never alone. Probably half the people at the motel were staying there because they were going through tough stuff in their life.
Hmm.
I feel so alone in there, and I feel that there's so much hope that you understand that whatever you are going through, where you are is just where you are. It's not who you are, and whatever you are going through, whatever it is, someone else is going through the same thing, or they just went through it, or they're 2 years ahead of you, and they can really offer a lot of support.
That's why I asked you about how you were feeling, Dave, because I know that so many people right now are going through some stuff. And I think when people go through their stuff, they tend to, first of all, think humanly, okay, I'm the only one going through this, so I need to just keep it to myself. And that's just a really bad place to be, especially if you don't have the positive mentality that you have, right? So easy to go down when you feel like you're alone. And then you've got guilt, shame, fear, all these things piled on top of it, right?
If I didn't naturally have that positivity or that happy gene, and it's just kind of who I've been, I would have never made it through.
Yeah.
Because there were nights I didn't know if I was going to make it till the next day. Like it was that I was full of so much shame and so much loneliness.
Hmm.
And like my whole life was a lie at that point because I wasn't telling my kids. I'm like, hey, everything's great. Let's go to soccer practice, and they didn't know like where I was all night. So it was a tough time for
That's
sure.
going to be so hard. So, what happened when you finally told everybody?
So the first person I started talking to was my sister, and she was a couple years older than me. I have amazing sisters, and I started talking to her, and she was shocked because everything looks normal in my world. They didn't know, but they also everybody knew there was this major financial crisis going on. So I think there was a little bit they understood that there's some
Mhm.
tough times out there. They just didn't know I got caught up in it with real estate investments and stuff. And she was really good. She listened. She gave me that first sense of hope. She taught me about being grateful for where I am, which we still talk about a lot today. And she talked to me a lot about just having faith you'll get through. And it was a couple months in before I really broke down. And it was when literally at about 2, 3 in the morning, the cops came up to the motel room next to me and broke in the door with a battering ram and drugged the guy away and arrested him for something. I still don't know to this day. That I just really thought, man, I really have to make some major changes here. And I had to call Troy, and Troy was my buddy who taught me how to balance my life in these 7 areas. He taught me how to be successful. And when I reached out to him, he was the same way. He was like, shocked and like, what the heck? Like, how did this happen? Everything looks great on a Christmas card, months ago. How did you find yourself here? And then he's the one who mentioned like, hey, where you are is just where you are. It's not who you are. He goes, let's just start putting our life back together. I'll be here for you. I'm your buddy. And let's see what we can do. And then I just really started to get very clear on the vision I wanted for my life, very clear on the goals I had for my life, very clear on the action steps I needed to take to get there. And I started working my butt off. And it wasn't like some overnight success. It was 5 years of grinding from this motel to finally sitting down and telling the kids. I will never forget the most painful day in my life to this day, hands down, is sitting down with 5 kids and telling them their parents are going through a divorce. We're losing the house. That's why dad's been driving this bad car. It's not because our cool cars are getting fixed. Like, really coming true with and telling the truth. It was one of the hardest things. The pain, I guess I can physically look at every one of my kids, my 4 daughters and my son, and I can remember crystal clear their emotions. One child started to laugh because she thought it was a joke. Once one child walked away, one just started crying on the other one's shoulder. So I remember this, and they're all amazing to this day. I mean, just we have great relationships and they're great, but in that moment, it was tough.
Yeah.
And that was the first thing I needed to do. I need to come clear. I need to come clean. I mean, and just say, this is where I am. But I promise I'm going to work my butt off to get it back. But it was from that motel to then we got the divorce, and then it was a 2-bedroom apartment with 5 kids, 2 bunk beds in one room. My son slept with me for 2 years, and then to finally a condo with 3 bedrooms, and we started moving up. And it was quite the journey back for sure.
You have hit on so many important points, Dave. But one thing I wanted to say is I love how you keep sharing your mantra of where you are is just where you are. It's not who you are. I think people need to hear that over and over and again. And I've started repeating it in my workshops, Dave. So I'm totally passing that forward. But I think it's important that people know that there are people in your world that love you and won't judge you, because I think that's a big thing. I think people are afraid to tell people stuff because they feel like they're going to be judged or condemned for where they are. And you reached out to a couple of safe people that helped you walk through it, right?
Yeah, I was actually very surprised. I reached out to very safe people. I think that's a great first step. You need to talk to somebody. I reached out to very safe people. Their response, looking back now, was what I would expect, because it's what I would do with everyone in my family. But at the time, you live in a lot of fear of what people are going to think and what people are going to say, and are they going to be disappointed? And what I really found was, once I started telling everybody, because I mean, once it starts to unravel,
Right.
It's like pulling on a thread on your t-shirt, right? And it just, you start telling everybody. I didn't get judged by that many people. Like it just started to really come true that everybody has their stuff they go through, and we're happy people, and we hug and we love each other, and we're on social media, we're traveling the world. But every face you see, if a bubble could pop up and tell you what they've gone through in their life, there's a lot of pain in there for most people.
Right.
So most people have this, let's have fun, it's amazing, but they can be very sympathetic and empathetic when they need to be in a tough situation. So it was amazing for me to have that kind of support. And that's really what we're trying to cultivate with what we do in our business, is really try to cultivate an amazing community that never judges, is always kind and supportive of people.
Yeah. The other thing you said, of course, is totally my jam. And I love that you brought it up, is that you had to get a really clear vision for what you wanted to create your life to look like. And this is why I aligned with you guys a little over a year ago, as you know, Dave. I mean, this is something I've been teaching unofficially for over 30 years. I'm just a big believer that you can, no matter where you are right now and what everybody else is telling you should do or whatever you've lost, that you can create a vision for whatever you want. You just have to get really clear, get that in writing, and then just to start taking the steps. The other thing I love that you said was that it took you 5 years. And I think people need to know that you can change your circumstances. You just have to be patient. You got to have a plan, and you got to be patient. right?
Yeah, and when you look back, 5 years actually goes pretty fast.
It
It
does.
really, truly does. It's kind of surprising. But it took me 5 years. The other thing that's very interesting when I reflect back is that talking to my kids, I was with my kids last night. My daughter had her 23rd birthday. My youngest daughter had her 23rd birthday. We were hanging out and we were talking about the good old days. And I feel like right now we're living the good old days, by the way, but back then they look at that as like the good old days. And they talk about that 2 bedroom apartment and they talk about it being such an amazing experience. And they talk about the condo as being an amazing experience. And they talked about how we sat down and we taped up the bumper together because I couldn't afford to fix the bumper on my mom's old car with duct tape. And they laugh about it now and everybody's doing great. But I think there is a part of keeping as much of a positive attitude in there as you can while you're working through that.
Hmm.
Understanding that you have to be grateful for all things that you're going through because they teach you lessons in this thing called life and you
Yes.
have to have faith for the future. But when you're going through it, it's just a grind, and it's just this is terrible, and oh my gosh, an embarrassment of this car and whatever it is. And now looking back, it was the good old days. The kids loved it. We had free fun all the time. I try to keep as much of a positive attitude as I can, especially around my children, and work my butt off when my kids weren't there to build this future that I wanted for myself and my kids. So
Right.
it was an amazing journey. Like there would not be this thing called Oola that I love, this company that I love. It wouldn't exist without that. If I wouldn't have went through that, Oola wouldn't exist. And Oola is like the thing I
Wow.
love so much, and it's brought so much to our family.
And I think that's a really good point that just about everybody that I've interviewed so far, Dave, has said the same thing that they now know why they went through what they went through,
Yeah.
that it's a big piece of their purpose and they're utilizing that experience to help other people.
Yeah, you would not I would not know this life that I have now existed without that. And I hear that from everyone I talk to, just like you, Carrie, that when you're going through the tough stuff, you don't know if that pressure and stress is gonna build a diamond or not, but you're in control of that. Like you really are more in control than you think. I don't think you control the pieces when you're going through a divorce or you lost someone close to you. You can't control all your emotions. But overall, with patience and persistence and time, you can really control the long term outcome
Right.
of where you want your life to go. And that you have to just sit in it and say, this kind of sucks. It's hard. It's a lot of work. It doesn't feel good. I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. Call it all out. Have some support. And then just have that clear vision of where you want to go. And then just understand it's going to be a lot of work, but I'm going to try and enjoy every single day along the way because I'm never getting this day back. Like
Right.
the most painful days, whatever I could say, February 1st of 2010 was a painful day, most likely because I was living in a motel or living in an apartment at the time. I will never get that day back. So I need to make sure I live that day to my fullest, and that's been 12 years ago now. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So it does go fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get it. It's been 8 years now since losing my husband and 5 since my son. And it's just gone so fast,
hmm
right? Yeah. So talk to me about some of the steps you took, Dave, when you started crawling out of the hole. Like, where did you start?
First of all, I did have a great support group, just my sister and Troy.
Hmm.
And coming clean is just such a weight off your shoulders. I heard something once that is so true: is if you really aren't hiding anything, like if you really truly are just not hiding anything and no lies, no one can hold anything against you. You own everything. Like if you came up to me and said, "I can't believe you got divorced. I can't believe you went through a bankruptcy." I mean, I wrote about it in a book. I talk about it on stages. Like
Hmm.
it's no big deal. Like I completely own it. No one's going to come up to me and surprise me with, I know something that about you no one knows because all my stuff is out there. And there's some power in that of just, this is exactly who I am. This is exactly who I went through. And this is just me. And there's a lot of power in that because there's no one coming up to you at any moment or nothing in the back of your mind saying, man, I hope no one finds out about this because it's out there. Right. So there's a lot of just when I decided to come clean of just like going through a bankruptcy, going through a divorce, all that. I just came clean. Like I called my parents, I told them, and my mom was crying that I'm going through a divorce. What about the kids? Like there's a lot of stress. But once I just came clean, so that was I just kind of clean slate. It was like one day I sat down and called everybody. It was clean slate. This is me. This is where I am. This is what's happened. This is what I've done. This is what's happened to me. But now I'm moving forward. And then to me, it's just really crystal clear. I had a big vision and a big dream for all 7 areas of my life. I had goals written down for all 7 areas of my life. And I had mini goals, little what we call daily action steps that I knew I was going to take every day. And I wasn't taking three. We teach everybody in our system to take three. I was taking 7 to 10 a day. Like I was working and grinding. And I said, I'm going to have fun every single day. I have no money, but I'm going to have fun every single day. And whether that's a movie night with the kids or soccer at a park, or there's ways to have free fun every single day and stay positive.
Mm.
That to me was the system. That was the secret. Clear vision of where you want to go in all your areas of life, knowing that it's going to take time, but you're not going to grind it out and like, this is just going to be brutal and I'm going to hate it for 5 years. No, I'm going to have fun and enjoy this ride for
Mm.
5 years. I'm not going to miss a day of enjoyment with my family and kids and creating joy and love. And then I'm just going to, every single day, I'm going to do 7 or more mini goals, something that's hard and scary. And I'm just going to push my way out.
Yeah.
And you said that the hole is so funny, like digging a hole. I literally felt like that. I felt like I was in a hole and I was creating like stairs out of this hole. Like it's a lot of physical labor. And I just meant 5 years, I'm getting through this. And that's the way I dug it out. I think sometimes people set too short if they're in a bad situation. Like I'm going through a divorce. I'm going to have everything fixed. I'm going to feel great in a month. Or I just lost someone close to me. I'm going to feel great in 2 months. And sometimes you have to say, this is going to hurt and be a lot of pain for years, but I'm going to enjoy the journey and work through it as much as I can.
Right.
People cut themselves. They don't give themselves enough time to really get through it.
Yeah, I like that visual of the stairs, Dave, that it's one goal at a time, baby steps, just daily action steps. And I think people miss that. They think that it's got to be one big monumental move all at once. And it's just, I have found the secret to success in every area of life is just being consistent, doing a little bit every day. And I know in the system that you and Troy have developed, I'll have you share that, is that in my little app, I just click off my 3 most important steps that I want to take that day. And they're not big things. They're
Yeah.
just little things that lead up to the bigger thing. And that's the key, right?
I, to this day, have not met anybody that's hit bottom and got it all back by one big swoop. I haven't. And I'm sure it's happened. I'm not saying it hasn't happened. But every single person I met that's gone through challenges and trials and errors and lost things and lost stuff they've started building those stairs
Right.
to success. And I visualize that every day. You're big into vision. I had my big dreams written down. I memorized them all. Like I thought every night before I went to bed, I was visualizing where I want my life to be. And the next day I was taking those action steps, and every action step, like you were saying, I was visualizing I'm in a hole and it's not great down here. It's dark and cold and scary. And I'm just taking the dirt I have and I'm building little steps and I'm just going to keep climbing out of this thing. And yeah, it takes years. For me, it took years, but I got there. But there was no one came in and was like, "Hey, guess what? Here's a ladder. Let's drop it down." No one's there to save you. You really have to like save yourself. You can have people help you build that dirt staircase, but no one's going to drop a ladder or a helicopter to drag you up.
So true. So true. So I know the next part of the story. So tell these guys a little bit about how you and Troy aligned and created what you guys now call Oola and what that looks like.
Yeah, the night at the motel when the cops broke in and took the guy away, I called Dr. Troy and he said, where you are is just where you are. It's not who you are. Let's get back to this system of finding balance, growth, and purpose in these 7 key areas that he used to be successful. When I used it, I was successful. When I drifted, I lost everything. And I said, I'm going to work on that tomorrow. He said, call me. And I literally drove my mom's car up the mountains. I was just there the other day. I know the exact spot I stopped at. It was in Salt Lake City at the time. I drove up Big Cottonwood Canyon and I pulled my car over because I love the mountains. I'm a huge fan of the mountains. And I have the little black notebook and I just started writing down my vision for each of these areas for my fitness, what I wanted for my health. I was not healthy at the time. And it was stress is what it was, just a lot of stress in my
Mhm.
life. I just didn't feel good. I wasn't sleeping. I had an eye twitch for about a year just because of all the stress in my life. So I was just falling apart. And then I went fitness, finance, family, field. And when I got to career, I started writing up what I thought I should, like open another clinic, start taking care of more patients, all of that. And I just ripped it out. And I said, what do I really, truly, what's the big vision for my life? And I wrote down be a visionary leader, educator, entertainer, facilitator of Oola around the world. And that made me cry. Like I was like, tears were flowing out of my eyes. I'm like, that's exactly why I'm going through what I'm going through. This is what I need to do. I have that notebook right in front of me. I'm looking at it right now. I carry it with me when I travel. But that was my vision, to be a visionary leader, educator, entertainer, facilitator of Oola around the world. And I came down the mountain super excited. I called Troy and I said, dude, I figured it all out. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this pain and I'm going to start Oola. And he said, cool, but like you might want to get an apartment and you might want to get a job and you might want to pay off that debt and you might want to talk to those attorneys and finalize your divorce. And he put me back into reality of getting those daily action steps and setting those goals to dig myself out. So it was about 5 years later when we wrote the first book. I didn't even feel completely qualified to write the book yet. I was still in a condo at the time. So that's where I was moving my life. I had moved from the beat up old Taurus to a minivan to like a beat up kind of crossover. And I was in a crossover in a condo and I felt embarrassed. But what I did at that point is I said, no, what's really always worked is complete transparency. So in the book, I never said, man, I'm in a Ferrari in a castle on, on a hill. I just said, I'm the Oola seeker. I'm seeking my journey back. I got a long ways to go. And that's really interestingly what resonated with people is just that honest transparency. People related to it. They said, I get it. And that's how the book took off. So that book became international bestseller. We got a publishing deal a couple years later. 2 more books came out. Over 1 million people in Oola now in 43 countries. And they're using this system of looking at their life in these 7 key areas, understanding where they are, where they want to go, how they're going to get there. They're going to run to what are called blockers like fear, guilt, self-sabotage, anger. They're going to be able to embrace accelerators that we teach them how to embrace, like gratitude, love, passion, wisdom, integrity. And then they live their Oola life. So from the books to live events to driving this crazy 1970s V-Dub bus across the country, collecting people's dreams on handwritten stickers. It's 30 plus layers thick of stickers from around the world. We've taken it to all 48 states.
Love that.
And now, really bringing out programs and products to help people live their best life. So that's the full like evolution of Oola over the last 10 years since 2012. The first book came out 10 years ago next month. And that's where it's been. So 5 years of grind. First book comes out, still broke for another 5 or 6 years, still working on getting my whole life figured out for 5 or 6 years with people, in front of people. Like I was never saying like, I'm the one, follow me. And it was more like, let's do this together. And my life is my life's been amazing the whole time. But where I am now is definitely a better place, less stress, more peace, more balance for sure. So I'm super grateful for that. But I'm honestly grateful for the whole journey.
I'm grateful that you and I have met because, I said to you when we met that I've been doing vision, for so long, doing Oola before there was Oola, right? That at one point I talked about creating what you guys have created, the digital framework and an app and the whole thing. And I'm so grateful I didn't do it because what you guys have created is far beyond what I saw. And I'm just grateful that there is that tool. And I'm grateful for the mantra you guys have that success is not a secret, it's a system.
Yeah.
And that's what Oola is. It's just a system that people can hold themselves accountable to. And I love that. Tell them real quickly, because we have a couple minutes left, where did the word Oola come from?
So when Troy first started teaching me, there's this system, this goal setting system about setting goals in 7 areas and taking daily action steps and the blockers and the accelerators. We would call it a goal setting system. And it really came down to having goal setting meetings. And I just one day said, it's just the lamest thing in the world that I would fly somewhere to Vegas or whatever for a goal setting meeting. I said, we got to call something else. And he thought it was funny. Troy's very analytical. He thought that's just dumb. It's a goal setting meeting. That's what it is. And I said, we got to call it someone else. So I bugged him for a while and he goes, okay, call it. Whatever you want to call it. What do you want to call it? And I'm like, I'm not sure, but I can't call it a goal setting meeting and goal setting stuff. It just sounds lame. And he goes, well, how do you feel now that your life is more balanced? And I'm like, ooh la la, baby. And that's literally said, ooh la la, baby. And he's like, well, there you go. Call it ooh la la. And I'm like, I can't call it ooh la la, but we can call it Oola. Done. Game over. And now we have thousands of Oola tattoos on their body. It's the craziest thing ever.
And the bus, love the bus.
Yeah.
All the things, just all the things that you guys are creating, Dave. And I know that you have a mission that you want to impact 1 billion lives in the next 7 years.
Yeah. We set out to impact 1 million lives. We hit that around year 8 in Oola with books sold and all the impact that we were having. And then we turned around and said, let's go do 1 billion. And that's 1 in 7 people. And we knew that we needed to certify coaches to help us, which we now have coaches in all 50 states and 23 countries. And we knew we needed to bring in ambassadors. And we needed to make the product digital so it could go all over the world instantly. And it's been an incredible year. We have an incredible team, but it's going to be an uphill battle. I mean, 1 billion people, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
So we've come a long way in a year. And I know you, Carey, as a watching Oola, you're starting to see it come out of the ground now with
Hmm.
it more going. But it's been the most fun the hardest I've ever worked in Oola in 10 years is the last year by far. And the most fun I've ever had in Oola. And we've had a lot of fun, like book tour with the Oola bus and traveling all over the world speaking. The most fun I've ever had is the last year for me because we're really creating something big right now.
You know, this is the biggest thing I think I really enjoy about you, Dave. So many things, but that you make things so fun. And I appreciate that about you.
We're going to look a lot different in 50 years if we decide to come back and do this podcast again. We might not even be here, so I'm not going to waste a day.
Yeah.
So I'm having fun every single day. It's really a thing I live by. Way before there was even Oola as a word, I would be working with patients, and people would come in so down and so like life is so terrible, and they're holding their $7 coffee and tell me how bad their life is, and it's just like, man, when you put it into perspective, life is so amazing no matter what you're going through, and we're not here long. And I'd always say, hey, we only got about 50 years, let's make the most of it. And now it's becoming a reality. I turned 50, so I probably only got a little about 50 left. But I used to say it a long time ago, we only got about 50. Let's make the most out of every single day.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, time is so precious. Life is so precious. I honestly don't waste a day. It drives people a little crazy around me, but I'm just not going to waste a day being upset or complaining about anything. I'm just not going to do it.
Well, the last thing I want to say about you, Dave, is that I know gratitude is a huge, huge piece of your life. I know it's gotten you through everything, your choice to be grateful, right? And I just so appreciate that about you. And I'm just so grateful for you in my life.
Oh, I'm grateful for you in my life. Honestly, I've met some amazing people, and you're one of those people. I love hanging out with you. I miss you. I haven't seen you
No, when
for,
you get
for a couple months now, so I can't wait to see you again soon. But I'm super grateful for you. And gratitude is really, if you're looking at how do I get a different perspective on life, start being grateful for all the things that you
yeah,
complain about. Because every single thing you complain about is still better than what most people in the world are going through. And just the fact that you could listen to this podcast, you're in the top couple percent. People don't have running water. People are in war in Ukraine and Russia. It's just there's just stuff all over this world that you're like, you have to look and say, man, I'm glad I'm living in this moment, listening to this podcast, enjoying this glass of clean water, and just stop complaining and
yeah.
just put it all into perspective.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you. I appreciate you being here with me today.
It's an honor.
Thank you all for watching and listening to this episode of Moving Through and Beyond. I'm your host, Carey Conley, and I'm here to remind you to keep looking up. If you found this episode inspiring or helpful, please share it with a friend or a family member. In order to be successful on this mission, I can't do it alone. Connect with me at www.careyconley.com, and don't forget to sign up for my weekly Do It On Purpose newsletter. Let's build this life-giving vision movement together to end this epidemic, save lives, and create purpose.